Hello everyone, this is Jean Saira de Torres. I'm a student of the University of Eastern Philippines under the program of Master of Arts in Language and Literature. Richards and Rogers, in their book Approaches and Method in Language Teaching, explain that the history of language teaching has been characterized by a search for more effective ways of teaching second and foreign languages. For more than 100 years, debate and discussion within the language teaching profession have often centered on issues such as the role of grammar in the language curriculum, the development of accuracy and fluency in teaching, the choice of syllabus frameworks in course design, the role of vocabulary in language learning, teaching productive and receptive skills, learning theories and their application in teaching, memorization and learning, motivating learners, effective learning strategies, techniques for teaching the four skills, and the role of materials and Although much has been done to clarify these and other important questions in language teaching, the teaching profession is continually exploring new options for addressing these and other basic issues and the effectiveness of different instructional strategies and methods in the classroom. Example. Let's talk about one of the major trends in the 20th century language teaching, the audiolingual method or ALM. Based on the principle that language learning is habit formation, the method fosters dependence on mimicry, memorization of set phrases, and overlearning. The birth of audiolingualism could be traced back to the explanation of its approach, where structuralism and behaviorism backed up the method. The theory of language underlying audiolingualism was derived from a view proposed by American linguists in the 1950s, a view that came to be known as structural linguistics. An important tenet of structural linguistics was that the primary medium of language is oral. Speech is language. Since many languages do not have a written form and we learn to speak before we learn to read and write, it was argued that language is primarily what is spoken and only secondarily what is written. The term structural referred to these characteristics. 1. Elements in a language were thought of as being linearly produced in a rule governed structured way. 2. Language samples could be exhaustively described at any structural level of description phonetic, phonemic, and morphological. 3. Linguistic levels were thought of as systems within systems, that is, as being pyramidally structured like this. Phonemic systems led to morphemic systems, and these in turn led to the higher level systems of phrases, clauses, and sentences. In 1961, the American linguist William Moulton, in a report prepared for the Ninth International Congress of Linguists, proclaimed the linguistic principles on which language teaching methodology should be based. According to him, language is speech, not writing. A language is a set of habits. Teach the language, not about the language. A language is what its native speakers say, not what someone thinks they ought to say. Languages are different. The theory of learning underlying the audiolingualism method was derived from the viewpoint of behaviorism. Behaviorism, like structural linguistics, is another anti-mentalist, empirically based approach to the study of human behavior. To the behaviorist, the human being is an organism capable of a wide repertoire of behaviors. The occurrence of these behaviors is dependent on three crucial elements in learning: a stimulus, which serves to elicit behavior, a response triggered by a stimulus, and reinforcement, which serves to mark the response as being appropriate or inappropriate and encourages the repetition or suppression of the response in the future. In ALM, reinforcement is said to be a vital element in the learning process because it increases the likelihood that the behavior will occur again and eventually become a habit. To apply this theory to language learning is to identify the organism as the foreign language learner, the behavior as verbal behavior, the stimulus as what is taught or presented of the foreign language, The response is the learner's reaction to the stimulus, and the reinforcement is extrinsic approval and praise of the teacher or fellow students, or the intrinsic self satisfaction of target language use. Speech was held to be primary and writing secondary. It was assumed that language teaching should focus on mastery of speech and that writing or even written prompts should be withheld until reasonably late in the language learning process. The principles 1. Foreign language learning is basically a process of mechanical habit formation. Good habits are formed by giving correct responses rather than making mistakes. By memorizing dialogues and performing pattern drills, the chances of producing mistakes are minimized. Language is verbal behavior, that is, the automatic production and comprehension of utterances, and can be learned by inducing the students to do likewise. Second, language skills are learned more effectively if the items to be learned in the target language are presented in spoken form before they are seen in written form. Oral training is needed to provide a foundation for the development of other language skills. The meanings that the words of a language have for the native speaker can be learned only in a linguistic and cultural context and not in isolation. Teaching a language thus involves teaching aspects of the cultural system of the people who speak the language. Hence, the design of the audiolingual method involves the following general idea. There is abundant use of language laboratories, tapes, and visual aids. Scales are sequenced. Listening, speaking, reading, and writing are developed in order. Structures are sequenced and taught one at a time. Structural patterns are taught using repetitive skills. Grammar is taught inductively with little or no explanations. Vocabulary is strictly limited and learned in context. Teaching points are determined by contrastive analyses between L1 and L2. There is an extended pre-reading period at the beginning of the course. Great importance is given to precise and native-like pronunciation. Use of the mother tongue by the teacher is permitted but discouraged among and by the students. Successful responses are enforced. Great care is taken to prevent learner errors. There is a tendency to focus on manipulation of the target language and to disregard content and meaning. Audiolingualists advocated a speech-based instruction with a primary objective of oral proficiency and dismissed the study of grammar or literature as the goal of foreign language teaching. Short-range objectives include training in listening comprehension, accurate pronunciation, recognition of speech symbols as graphic signs on the printed page, and ability to reproduce these symbols in writing. Long-range objectives must be language as the native speaker uses it. There must be some knowledge of a second language as it is possessed by a true bilingualist. Oral proficiency is equated with accurate pronunciation and grammar and the ability to respond quickly and accurately in speech situations, or automaticity. The teaching of listening comprehension, pronunciation, grammar, and vocabulary are all related to development of oral fluency. The syllabus contains the key items of phonology, morphology, and syntax of the language, arranged according to their order of presentation. This may have been derived in part from a contrastive analysis of the differences between the native language and the target language, since these differences are thought to be the cause of the major difficulties the learner will encounter. The language skills are taught in the order of listening, speaking, reading, and writing. Listening is viewed largely as training in oral discrimination of basic sound patterns. The language may be presented entirely orally at first. Written representations are usually withheld from learners in early stages. When reading and writing are introduced, students are taught to read and write what they have already learned to say orally. An attempt is made to minimize the possibilities for making mistakes in both speaking and writing by using a tightly structured approach to the presentation of new language items. At more advanced levels, more complex reading and writing tasks may be introduced. In ALM, new material is presented in the form of a dialogue. Dialogues provide the means of contextualizing key structures and illustrate situations in which structures might be used as well as some cultural aspects of the target language and are used for repetition and memorization. Correct pronunciation, stress, rhythm, and intonation are emphasized. After a dialogue has been presented and memorized, specific grammatical patterns in the dialogue are selected and become the focus of various kinds of drill and pattern practice exercises. These are the kinds of drills that some will be demonstrated at the end of the video, with repetition, inflection, replacement, restatement, completion, transposition, expansion, contraction, transformation, integration, rejoinder, and restoration. Learners play a reactive role by responding to stimuli and thus have little control over the content, pace, or style of learning. They are not encouraged to initiate interaction because these may lead to mistakes. The fact that in the early stages, learners do not always understand the meaning of what they are repeating is not perceived as a drawback. For by listening to the teacher, imitating accurately, and responding to and performing controlled tasks, they are learning a new form of verbal behavior. On the other hand, the teacher models the target language, controls the direction and pace of learning, and monitors and corrects the learner's performance. The teacher must keep the learners attentive by varying drills and tasks and choosing relevant situations to practice structures. Language learning is seen to result from active verbal interaction between the teacher and the learners. Moreover, tape recorders and audiovisual equipment often have central roles in an audiolingual course. If the teacher is not a native speaker of the target language, the tape recorder provides accurate models for dialogues and drills. A taped lesson may first present a dialogue for listening practice. Allow for the students to repeat the sentences in the dialogue line by line and provide follow-up fluency drills on grammar and pronunciation. Here are the techniques in ALM. Technique number 1. Use the backward build-up technique for long or difficult patterns. Tomorrow. Your turn? Very good. In the cafeteria tomorrow. Your turn? Very good. We'll be going in the cafeteria tomorrow. Your turn? Good. These boys will be going in the cafeteria tomorrow. Your turn. Very good. Technique number 2. Use hand motions, signal cards, notes to cue responses. The teacher is like a choir director. Your turn. Stop. Your turn. Technique number 3. Ignore all but gross errors of pronunciation when drilling for grammar practice. Cafeteria. Cafeteria. Again. Very good. Technique number 4. Drill material should always be meaningful. If the content words are not known, teach their meanings. What is a cafeteria? In the United States of America, a cafeteria is a food service location inside a school or an institution. Outside of the US, it's called canteen. Again, cafeteria. Technique number 5. Drills should be conducted as rapidly as possible so as to ensure automaticity and to establish a system. Again, let's do this faster. Tomorrow. In the cafeteria tomorrow. We'll be going in the cafeteria tomorrow. These boys will be going in the cafeteria tomorrow. Again, tomorrow. In the cafeteria tomorrow. will be going in the cafeteria tomorrow. These boys will be going in the cafeteria tomorrow.